as Matt Melzak, always on time, joins us. And Matt, we'll get into this week's schedule in a moment. But first, let's talk about what happened this past week. They go down to Columbus, win the first 3 against the Clippers, get a 5-game winning streak, and then drop the final 2. But they still took 3 of 5 from a team they're chasing in the standings.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mark, that's where I would start. You know, no matter how you look at it, yeah, maybe you lost the last 2. Okay, that's a sad part of the whole thing. But out of the 5 games you ended up playing with the Sunday rainout, you won the series. And that, to me, is the biggest thing. You won the series. You went down there in a very difficult environment, a tough place to play where you had already gone once and lost 5 out of 6. And you went down there and won the series. So take that, run with it, and get on to who you're going to face this week in Louisville.
As you mentioned, Sunday's game was rained out. Now, this is the second time in the last 6 weeks this has happened where the Hens are rained out on Sunday. It happened a couple weeks ago in St. Paul, happened this past week in Columbus. Hens aren't going back to Minnesota. They're not going back downstate, so they're going to make up those games in Toledo, so they'll add on to those series with the Saints coming in a couple of weeks, Clippers later in September. I suppose the good news is they are going to make up those games, but from a strategy standpoint, all of a sudden you are losing your home field advantage in a game you're playing at home.
Hey, yes and no. Yes and no, Mark. What ends up happening is, let's take the St. Paul one as a great example, because that game actually started. Yeah. So they were in the top of the first inning.
They scored a run.
Hens had already scored a run. You're right. They were up 1-0 in the game. So what is going to happen is that first game when the team comes to town in St. Paul, that first Tuesday will get started in the top of the first inning with the Hens on the road, so to speak, even though they're at home. So yes, and then they'll play a full 9 inning because that one started. Then the second game will be like a doubleheader, and it'll go to a 7-inning game. And Toledo will be the home team, the standard. With this Columbus one that just happened yesterday, is that one's going to go away and get added onto the schedule probably for that Tuesday, the first time in for Columbus on that Tuesday, and we'll play a straight doubleheader. It'll be 2 7-inning games. Toledo will be the road team in game 1, home team in game 2. So, in a way, you don't get an extra gate. Just fans in Toledo get lucky that they get the extra time if they want to get down early and watch the games.
A couple years ago, Kristen Stewart led the International League in home runs for the Mud Hens. Could we have another home run champ for the Hens? Josh Lester now up to 24. He's come on strong the last couple of weeks.
You know what? It's not even the last couple of weeks, Mark. It's really the last couple of months for him. When he got through the first 2 months of the regular season, this was a guy that was batting 190, 188. I mean, he was really scuffling at the plate. And then in June, that midway point of June, it started to take off a little bit for Josh, and he's been close to a 300 hitter since. He hits with a ton of power, plays a good first base, although doesn't get to play it much now with Spencer Torkelson, so they've tried him at second. He's done okay there. Didn't make an error at third base when he's played there. Has done very well in the outfield as well. I mean, he's not the fastest guy, and he'll even tell you that. But he's getting the job done in the field, which is allowing his bat to stay in the lineup. And it's a bat that has to stay in the lineup because of how well he hits the baseball. He's hitting it so much right now, you've got to figure the guys in Detroit are taking a notice and saying, you know what, until Torkelson's ready, although Torkelson had a very good week, yes, and his August numbers are starting to come around to what we are more accustomed to seeing from Spencer Torkelson. But, at some point you may want to give Josh Lester that look at the major league level and just see. A guy who's hit 24 home runs to this point in the year, just like Kerry Carpenter. At some point, you had to give him a look. And I think that's where the Tigers ended up getting to, where Carpenter just keeps hitting bomb after bomb after bomb. They're like, we got to call this guy up. We got to get him to the majors. We got to see if he can do it here. I think it's the same thing with Josh Lester here, probably sooner than later.
And with Jonathan Scope perhaps going on the IL, he left the Tigers game Saturday with an injury, and Miguel Cabrera has not been playing regularly. That might be a spot for Josh Lester. We'll find out over the next couple of days what's going to happen with Josh Lester. So as I alluded to earlier, this week, Louisville Bats come to town. We're back in the school session. So we've got some weird start times this week.
Yeah, you know what? A little bit different this week when you look over the entire schedule there, and it really is that the games this middle part of the week are very important because of the fact that they're going to start at 6:30. So we bump up that time a little bit. So you got the 6:30 games, and on Sunday you got the 2:05. So it's a more friendly schedule for families and parents who want to bring their kids down to the ball games.
Yeah, a chance to get out to the game and then still get home, get the kids off to school the next day. Let's talk a little about this Bats team. They have struggled throughout the year, but as you will tell us every week, you never know what's going to happen until you show up at the ballpark.
Yeah, you don't. And you've got, some more prospects are making their way up because of the fact that the Reds really loaded up at the trade deadline. So, Spencer Steers with the Louisville Bats now. We're going to see Brandon Williamson probably twice this week. Looks like he's going to be the scheduled starter tomorrow. So, he's one of those guys that the Reds are really looking at because he's a rotational piece for them. So, it's going to be a different look to the Louisville Bats as opposed to the one that we saw, a month and a half ago.
All right, thank you very much, Matt Melzak from the Toledo Mud Hens. Of course, you can see the Hens games live on BCSN all week long, starting tomorrow at 6 o'clock around the bases.
You got it.